So, good day everyone. Today, we are going to report the last topic of our subject, the PED 104, the teacher and the school curriculum, the chapter 9, which is entitled Unpacking Curriculum Standards and Competencies. So, my co-reporter are Miss Baliesta Princess Aina and Miss Gutang Rizal Jane. So, next, before we start now, I am going to read our lesson objective. So, this chapter discusses the process for unpacking curriculum standard and competencies, which is one of the essential tasks of a teacher in implementing the K-12 curriculum. In this chapter, you will discuss the process for unpacking curriculum standard and competencies and experience unpacking curriculum competencies to identify appropriate instructional stages and assessment tools. So before we start our discussion today, I prepare some essential questions. The first question is, what is unpacking curriculum standards and competencies? So, unpacking curriculum, it is a curriculum that technically occurs when the intended curriculum is interpreted or translated by the teachers into a classroom instruction. It is a connecting process that transpires between the curriculum planning and the curriculum implementation. When we say curriculum standard, it means that to analyze the language, instructing clues, and describe two aspects that standard students needs to know: essential knowledge and essential skills. So that is the meaning of unpacking curriculum. So next essential question is, why we need standard curriculum? We really need standard curriculum because the standards are carefully map out the sequence. They can help students and teachers to avoid redundancy or unnecessary repetition, while also creating a progression of instruction in which the lesson builds in previous lesson, moving students from simpler concept to move complex and challenging concept. So that is the importance of curriculum standard, that it can be our base or our guide to know what are we going to do as a learners. Also, we can use it as a guide that what are we going to learn and how we are going to learn. And also for the teachers, the curriculum standard is very useful because the curriculum standard it will help them to realize that the lesson of the student from simpler to complex. So that is the meaning of, and that is the importance of curriculum standard. So next slide. The definition and example of curriculum standard and competencies. Curriculum standards are widely used in the United States in some countries for their curriculum. As discussed earlier in this book, curriculum standards are board statement of students need to know and also to do as the result of learning. In K-12 curriculum, standards are classified as the content standard, to performance standards. The K-12 curriculum also include learning competencies. The Department of Education and its Memorandum Order Number 8 Series 2015 define curriculum standards and competencies as follow. So the first curriculum standards that define is the content standards. So in our previous lesson, we already discussed what are the content standards, the performance standards, and the learning competencies. According to Sir, that unable for us to do the standards or to implement the curriculum, we really need to have a content standard. And diba, for the first the first is the content. So, what are the content standard of our curriculum? So, content standard, it is identify and set the essential knowledge and understanding that should be learned by the students. So, in implementing the unpacking curriculum, no, so in implementing it, the content standard, it is very useful and essential to know as implementers that they really need to share what are the knowledge and understanding that the student should learn in a specific time. So for example, no, in our in high school, 'di ba? We have different curriculum. So in that curriculum, they have a specific and they have kanang ilahara bitaw yung content standard or ilahara yung content. So in that way, not all content is standard. So in order for us to say that or to said that that curriculum is very useful and have standard and competencies, so we can evaluate it by the one standards or the aspect of the standard which is content standard. So it is the set of knowledge or the topic of that content in that said curriculum. So next is the performance standard. So describe the abilities, skills that the learners are expected to demonstrate in relation to content standard and integration of 21st century skills. So as far as remember no that before, the teachers are not knowledgeable on the 21st century, which they use technology. But nowadays, most of all, especially the 21st century like us, 'di ba? We already know how to operate, how to use technology in terms of teaching. So that's it, no. So in the performance standard, no, it is very useful that we really need to align our performance to our content standard. So for example, our content is talk about mathematics. So in our performance also, we need to be align it to our content. So lisod pod ang atoang activities or atoang mga performance base is it's talk about the literature. So it is not aligned, di ba? So it is very important that our content standard it is very important that our performance standard or activities should be aligned in our content standard in order to give credentials to our content standard or to support that our content standard is very useful and it will become useful to our learners. So that's it, no? So next is the learning competencies. So learning competencies refers to the knowledge, skills, and understanding the learners needs to demonstrate in every lesson or activities. We all know that curriculum, they have a content, they have, di ba? When we say content, it is the lesson or it is the knowledge or what are the knowledge that the teachers will impart to their students, what are the understanding that should be learned by our students. So that is the content, no. So the performance is the activities. So the last essential So the last classified as a standard is the learning competencies. We cannot say that our curriculum is standard if we don't have learning competencies. So these learning competencies, it talks about the knowledge, the skills, and understanding of the learners need to demonstrate in every lessons or activities. So this means that as a teacher, di ba, at the end of the lessons, our discussions, we give assessment to our students. to know if they learn from us, if they have learnings, or if they gain a knowledge, or they enhance their skills the way we teach, di ba? So, the learning competencies, it is refers to the knowledge and skills and understanding of the learners. So, to know that if our students have something learned in our discussion, to know if the to give them activity that, for example, we give them an oral paper pencil test. So if you have a high score, if the most of the student got a high score, so then we can say that our learnings or our teaching is effective. So that's it na, the learning competencies. Basta it refers the knowledge, the skills, and the understanding of the learners if they can apply it to their daily life. So that's it now. So next, the following are the content standard, performance standard, and learning competencies and the K-12 curriculum. So now the following slides are just example of the content standard, the performance standard, and the learning standards in K-12 curriculum. Diba K-12 curriculum, this is the having a curriculum of grade 11 and grade 12. So since the Department of Education produce or propose the new curriculum, which is K-12, so we also have a new content standard, the performance standard, and the learning competencies. So next, as you can see now in the second column, in the first row, that we have the subdomain, the standard, learning competencies, code, and learning materials. So based on the book, that the subdomain, or we can say that it is the topic or the subject. So under the subdomain, we have the life science, body, and the senses, or BS. So it is the topic, no, or the content, diba? It is the content. So the standards is the content. So we have two standards here, the content and the performance. So for content, the child demonstrate on understanding of blah blah blah. So that's it, no? So the body parts and their uses. So when we say content, it is the lesson or the topic of the teacher that you are going to discuss to your students, diba? So that's it. So in this subject now, the life science, the content there is the body parts and their uses. So these are the topics that you are going to impart to your students, diba? So next is the performance standard. The child shall be able to blah blah blah. Then in the second row, take care of oneself and environment and enable to solve problems encountered within the content of everyday living lives. So that's it now. So when we say the child shall be able to, so it is, diba, we already know that it is a performance base. So in the next, in below it, the take care of oneself in environment and be able to solve problems encountered within the content of everyday life. See, diba, as I said earlier, that if the teacher is very effective and have the students really listening to her or him, diba, they can get some knowledge that they can use it in their everyday life. So if the content has the standard, or if the content is very strong, or the teachers is very teaching, if the teachers is really teaching to their students, so for example, this topic, the body parts and their uses. So for example, diba, the teachers teach the learners what are the body parts of our body, the head, the shoulder, the knees. So that's it now. So in performance standard, it talks about how that specific learning apply in our daily life. So, for example, na remember when I was grade 6, I think, basta elementary days. So, we talk about the skull, the skull protect the brain. So because of that, the teacher teach us that the skull is protecting our brain. So I can apply it in our daily life. So I can say that I really need to protect or my head, because if the brain if the brain is ma-damage, so we cannot think, we cannot function, or maybe we can pwede ta mamatay, di ba? So that is that learning from my teachers, elementary teachers, I can apply it in my daily life. So that's it, same ra na siya ato. So next is the learning competencies. So the first learning competencies is identify one basic body parts. So, di ba, if the teacher, we can really say that the curriculum is effective and the teacher is effective if the students know how to answer the learning competencies. So these learning competencies, I can say that it is just like the assessment, or basta different kind of assessment. Diba? We have different types of assessment: the formative, the descriptive, the traditional, the authentic, and etc. So learning competencies, identify the one basic body parts. So this is, diba, as we can observe that the learning competencies and the content standards are very aligned. So it is very important that we need to be careful in making our content standard and learning competencies to we really need to align it in each other, because if we cannot align it or they are not connected, so maybe one of our standards will be kind of useless. So the second learning competency is tell the function of each basic body parts, then demonstrate the movement using different body parts, name the 5 senses in their corresponding body parts, and use the senses to observe the environment. So di ba, ma-observe yun na to nga ang learning competencies is very connected to the content, di ba? We cannot for this, for example, we cannot make learning competencies if it is not from our content standard, di ba? So that's it. So the code is PNEKBS ID1. So that's it, no? The PNKBS ID2, then PNEKBS IC3, then PNEKBS IC4, then the last one, the PNEKBS, the IC5. So for learning materials, it asks for the teachers what are the learning materials, what are the learning materials that she used during his or her discussion. Okay, next slide. So, the next, the content standard. So, this is the second example, no, from K-12 grade 3 science curriculum guide. So, it is one of the example, it talks about the content standard, performance standards, and the learning competencies. So, changes that materials undergo. So, the content standard is the effect of temperatures on materials. Then the performance standard is the investigate the different changes in materials as affected by temperature. Then the next is the learning competencies, the describe changes in materials based on the effect of temperature. So 4.1 solid to liquid, 4.2 liquid to solid, 4.3 liquid to gas, 4.4 solid to gas. Then the code is S3MT IH-J-4. So for the learning materials is the beam or the grade 3 unit 3 materials, distance learning module 4.3, then the beam grade 3 unit 3 materials module 44 to 49. So this is the example, no, that it talks still it talks about the content, the performance, and the learning competencies of that the teachers need to teach to their students. So next example is a source from K-12 Senior High 21st Century Literature in the Philippines and the World Curriculum Guide. So that's it now. So for the content, the first column A, 21st century literature from the religion, where the school is based in relation to the literature of other religion in various genres and forms of consideration of one various dimensions of the Philippines literacy history from pre-colonial to contemporary. Then the second is the colonial authors and works of the Philippines national artists in the literature. Then the last one is the names of authors and their works and backgrounds of their literature from the region where the high. Then for the content standard, the learners will be able to understand and appreciate the elements and context of 21st century Philippines literature from the region. Then the performance standard, the learner will be able to demonstrate understanding and appreciation of 21st century literature from the religion through first, a written close and analysis and critical interpretation of the literacy text in terms of form and theme and description of this context. And second, an adaptation of the text into other creative form using a multimedia. Then the learning competencies is writing a close analysis and analytical interpretation of literacy text and doing an adaptation of the required from the learners the ability to first identify the geographic, linguistic, and ethnic dimension of the Philippines literacy history from pre-colonial to the contemporary. Second, identify the representative texts and authors from each region. Example, the engage in oral history research with a focus on key responsibilities from the student, region, province, or town. Then the last is the value of contributions of local writers to the development of regional literacy tradition. So we have different codes, no? The EN1, 21st century literature 21, then EN12 Lit IB 22, then EN12 Lit IC 23. So this came from the source of K-12 Senior High School 21st Century Literatures in the Philippines and the World Curriculum Guide. So this is the came from the 21st century literature. Diba, in our senior high school days, we have this kind of subject, the 21st century literature. So the next slide, it will discussed by my co-reporter, Miss Princess Aina Balyasta. So thank you for listening and God bless you all.